Hi, I'm your host, Kevin Eikenberry, and usually these episodes are about me sharing a short piece of information with you or bringing on a guest. But for the next 6 weeks, as a part of this very special series called The Evolving Workplace, I'll be handing the mic over to Wayne Turmel. Wayne's been my co-author of The Long Distance Leader twice, The Long Distance Teammate, and The Long Distance Team. And he's been the host of an ongoing podcast called Long Distance Work Life Podcast, which has just come to a close. Although all those episodes are worth your time, go to longdistanceworklife.com to learn more. In this series, Wayne will give new context and new ideas for us as leaders to understand the evolving workplace and how we can lead our organizations and teams through it. Hope you will enjoy all of these episodes in the series, and I hope you'll continue to enjoy everything else we bring you on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. And now, here's Wayne.
Hi, everybody. This is Wayne Turmel again. I am here with the 5th episode in our continuing podcast series on the evolving workplace. Today, we're going to talk about 5 mindsets that individuals need to develop, no matter where you are in the organization, to really survive and thrive in the way the workplace is changing. We did this purposely. Last episode, we talked about what organizations need to consider and what their biggest challenges are. And this was intentional because unless you know what the person paying you or the person you're hoping will pay you wants and needs, it's pretty hard to provide it. To be blunt, the future belongs to those who can provide value to their employer beyond just the bare minimum. And you want to make sure that your employer recognizes that value. You know, Darwin is often credited with saying that survival of the fittest is what makes you last. And actually, that's not what he said. He actually never said that. Somebody else reading his work said that's what Darwin said. In fact, and this is far more important, Darwin's words were, and I'm quoting here, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most responsive to change." That's what we're trying to do with this podcast series, with all the work that we do in the remote, long distance, and evolving workplace here at the Kevin Eikenberry Group. So let's start with what we really need to develop. The first thing is that we need to become more and more comfortable with technology, and in particular, AI. Most technology comes at us in fits and starts. And during COVID, we kind of had this massive change in what technology was available to us. Microsoft Teams and Slack came into use, Zoom, Teams, whatever tools we were using for video. And collaboration tools are great, and they're going to continue to improve incrementally, as we said in another episode. The challenge for most people is going to be maximizing the tools that we have. Most importantly, artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is already being built into a lot of what we do. Don't shy away from it. If you're using tools like Zoom, there are some great AI tools in there. For example, it will take far better notes than you can, and you can pay attention to the meeting at the same time. There are a couple of skills around AI that individuals are going to have to sharpen and get used to. First, AI will give you exactly what you asked for, which is the problem. It's how you craft your questions, writing prompts. That's actually a job description now, is people whose job it is to write prompts for AI to get the best quality outputs. Um, if you ask questions that are too narrow in scope or ask for data that meets something that you've already got in your head, you might miss out on important context or new information that isn't there. And the second part of AI literacy is using the information but not relying on it. And this sounds like a contradiction, but this is for two reasons. First, as silly as it sounds, AI hallucinates. It doesn't mean that it sees rabbits on the ceiling and that kind of thing, but if there are gaps in its knowledge, it will make up stuff to fill the gaps. Just as an example, I asked a couple of different AI tools to give me a one paragraph bio on author Wayne Turmel, and one of them came back with a degree I do not possess from a university I did not attend, and credited me with a book I did not write. Now, while it's flattering and I would love to use that information, it just ain't true. The value that human beings bring to interacting with AI is not only that we craft the questions, that we get to determine what information we're looking for, and anybody can cut and paste an answer that they get. But can you recognize the warning signs, such as the most likely answers? When it tells you most likely, it means it's guessing. It might even mean it's hallucinating. Do you have the ability to interpret what ChatGPT or Copilot or any of these things tell you, interpret it, re-ask the question, or are you just what we used to call in radio news ripping and reading? Valuable teammates can spot errors, rephrase the answers into something more easily understood, and generally turn it into more value. So not only do you have to maximize the technology, remember 80% of people use only 20% of the features, so odds are we can do better, but also how we interact with AI is going to be absolutely critical. Secondly, we need to cultivate adaptability and flexibility. We talk about this a lot in our work and our classes. Specifically, Kevin Eikenberry's new book, Flexible Leadership, talks a lot about this. And I know this segment is for individual contributors, but if you are listening to this and you are listening to the information and seeking the kind of stuff that we're talking about here, odds are that you are a leader, even if you don't have the job title. According to many financial sources, the Financial Times of London being one of them, 10% of the jobs being filled today have job titles that literally didn't exist 10 years ago. And those that do probably don't bear much resemblance to what those jobs looked like in the past. Remember what we said about bank tellers, for example, and how the role of a bank teller looks very different today than it did even a few years ago. Same with admin, secretaries don't exist anymore, but the job title of admin looks very different than it did back in my mother's day when she was an executive secretary. So we need to be adaptable and flexible and be less concerned with the letter of what the job description says and what the employer is actually looking for. And this leads us to last week's episode where we were talking about what's important to employers. I remember telling my daughter when she was graduating from high school that nobody is hiring you to fill a position. They are hiring you because they hope you bring value for the work they pay you, and that is as true now as it's ever been. Okay, how do we add value? Well, one of the biggest ways we add value, and the third skill that we need to work on, is developing communication skills that really stand out in the evolving workplace. It's been true forever that the people most likely to be promoted are the people who can best communicate, who can take what AI gives us, who can take what we have been told that our customers want, interpret it, and then communicate in a way that brings value. Whether that is in writing, whether that is orally, and presentation skills are still going to matter. Virtual presentation skills and leading meetings is going to be absolutely crucial as we are mitigated and mediated by technology more and more. And whether you're in the office some of the time or remote, the way that we communicate is going to matter. Reports are different than emails, which are different than texts, which are different than ad hoc meetings, which are different than formal presentations. Your ability to communicate your thoughts depends on the willingness of the audience to hear you out, and that means adjusting your presentation or communication style to them. Understanding who you are talking to and what they want is the best way to make sure that you give it to them. Now, when you're trying to find a job or you're trying to further your career, you're going to need to build new relationships, and you are going to have to, and I know the word gives everybody eye roll, you're going to have to network. You always have. It's just that when you were in the office, you knew who was in payroll, you knew who was in marketing, you ran into Jerry at the coffee machine, and you developed these relationships and the little nodes in your network organically. When you work remotely, when you work in a hybrid space where not everybody is present at the same time, you're going to have to build strong relationships. And building strong relationships isn't just about getting your work done, but it's actually paying attention to your environment. One of the temptations of working remotely or working in a hybrid environment is that when you're not in the office, you don't have to pay attention to politics. Well, yeah, you do. And it doesn't mean you have to get involved, and it doesn't mean it turns into Game of Thrones, but you need to know what's happening in the company. Are things going well? Are things not going well? What departments are getting the love and the funding and the budget, and what departments are not? What is rewarded in your organization and what is not? And where is the business going? Not just your employer's business, but whatever industry you happen to be in. And you want to stay aware of the environment so that if you need to make a move, if you want to make a move, you know how, when, and why to do it. Building relationships is what builds careers. And so, as an individual, you need to introduce yourself to people that perhaps you don't know but should. You need to make yourself available to your teammates and to others in the organization. And those things are really, really important. If you're going into the office a couple of days a week, use the time that you're in the office for those human connecting social activities. Have those conversations that maybe you've been putting off, and it's going to pay off in the long term. The last thing, and this goes back to last week's episode, is you need to understand your employer and future employers. Keep an eye on the industries. Keep an eye on your company's performance. Sales numbers, if you're not in sales, can be incredibly boring, but they're also a really good indicator of what's coming down the pipe at you as someone who fulfills orders, as somebody who talks to customers, as somebody who wants to stay employed in a profitable company. Knowing what's going on, having some peripheral vision, is going to be one of the most important things you can do as an employee. You're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to read that company newsletter that comes out that you immediately delete. You're going to have to pay some attention, set hashtags for your employer's name or for your industry so that on social media you can pick up on trends and articles that might be interesting. And that in turn helps you add value to the conversation with your manager and your peers. The thing is, you can't provide value, which is what's going to determine your success as an individual employee. You can't determine value if you don't know what the other party wants. So there are lots of resources. If you haven't read The Long Distance Teammate, Stay Engaged and Connected While Working Anywhere, even if you're an in-office employee, you're going to find lots of great information in there. Kevin Eikenberry and I have created, I think, a really useful guide for individual team members. And we're going to dig more into this topic. Our last and final episode of The Evolving Workplace is going to involve what leaders need to do, and particularly large L leaders, that is those with the titles. But if you aspire to being a leader in an organization someday, I think you're going to find that interesting. So please join us on the next episode. Thank you for joining this one. If you haven't heard the previous episodes, go ahead and go back and check those out. And of course, you can find past episodes of the Long Distance Work Life episode at longdistanceworklife.com. We'll be here next week with the final episode. Thanks so much.